Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. Tonight's special guest, episode 49. 49 episodes. We're one more away from 50. Pretty cool. It's been a while since we've been on the air. Tonight's guest is Phil Jamison from Matchless Amplifiers. Phil, how are you?
I am amazing. Thank you for asking.
Awesome.
And thanks for inviting me onto the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for agreeing. We're honored to have you on, man. And Dave, what's going on with you?
Not too much. Just getting back in the swing of things. Back from Sweetwater, but so are you.
Yeah, it's been a long week.
Yeah, a short week.
Yeah, short. Like well, I got in on Sunday, and then boom, it was like back to work.
Yeah, I didn't get back to Monday night, so that's why it seems short for me. But I work tomorrow too, so hey,
Oh, there you go. See, I'm off tomorrow. Hey, we got Sean Tubbs, first in the house.
Oh, cool.
What's up, Sean?
Hello, Sean Tubbs.
Not yet.
Yes, it was good seeing Sean. I saw Sean met him finally at Sweetwater Gear Fest, so that was cool. It was good to see him. I know he was busy at the Rev booth. Yeah, he's a killer player. Really great.
All those people running through that Rev booth.
Yeah. Hey, there were a lot of people.
It's got a slide on the Rev booth. It's just like there wasn't that many people running through a lot of booths.
Well, they were in the back. It was kind of, like they were in the back of you guys, so it was kind of hard to find.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I would go from peace and solitude.
Yeah, definitely make it quiet.
Our booth right next door, which is just the magazines on a table.
Yeah, you should have. Did you go over to the drum place?
Why would I do that?
Yeah, I subjected myself to that. So.
But you're a drummer first, so.
Yeah, but like even I didn't want to get on or anything. It's not like I wanted to play, but so Matchless Amplifiers. I'm so intrigued with those amps because I've been seeing them since probably it's like the 80s, late 80s.
Well, it was founded in '89 by Mark Sampson and Rick Parada, and they made just a few amps, right around '89, '90, and most of that was in Rick Parada's house. He was like one of the, basically the producer of Matchless. It was sort of Mark's ideas and concepts of circuits and what people were looking for, and Rick was the one who executed it and sort of made it that matchless quality that made it what it is. With the chassis, the layouts, the parts. That was kind of his call on that, and yeah. I mean, and then right around late '90, '91, it really kind of saw a nice spike. It seemed like the digital processed thing got really big in the late '80s with the racks. Thank you, Dave Friedman. And
I didn't start.
And then it just seemed like it kind of like things sort of went full circle, eventually, and people kind of went back to combos and real amps, and and they needed stuff that was reliable out on the road and sounded great in the studio, and that's where Matchless really filled in. And like kind of filled in a space that really wasn't there before.
Yeah.
As far as the boutique amp thing goes.
And they've always been hand wired, right? They've always been point.
Yeah. Oh,
point.
yeah.
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 So it's always been a high end.
Early ones really looked like a rat's nest. I mean, and it was a lot of like hodgepodge of parts, just kind of whatever they could get. And then I actually started in late '92, thanks to Dave Friedman right there. Do you even remember that? Yeah, that's what I thought. That was a lot of lot of years ago. I was in between jobs. I just left another amp company, and Dave said I was over at his house, and he said, "Hey, I was just talking to one of the guys at Matchless, and they're looking for people, who can build."
Oh, I do remember this.
Yeah, and I made a phone call and went over and interviewed Rick and Mark, and they basically pulled a chair out at a desk and said, "There, go." And geez, I mean, now here we are in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. You guys go way back.
Yeah. Oh, way back.
The DC30 is still one of the classic amps.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fantastic amp.
Great
and
amp.
I've actually refined it quite a bit with layout, and then using some different parts that made the amps quieter with less white noise. There's less hums, less field noise going on, and it's been a great improvement. I changed the effects loops from the TRS to just standard quarter-inch send return.
Yay!
Yeah, and moved some things around. And I tell you that the very first chassis that I built like that, I was like, oh shit, I'm not getting any signal. There's no sound. There's no nothing. And I made the mistake of strumming a chord while the amp was just full wide open and about knocked me through the wall. And I was like, hey, I think we finally improved the DC30 after all that time. But I was also kind of painted into a corner with the layouts. At that time, it was really only structured to just be one kind of amp. And then so now I developed it with reverb, and I can kind of cross-pollinate like a lot of different models and different things with that one chassis, so I'm not just kind of stuck with one thing. And having to modify and cut into 14 gauge cold roll steel is not a fun day, and so I don't have to do that anymore, and it's all like laid out perfectly. So especially like if you take an amp right now to this day, they're stunning side-by-side comparison with the older ones. So it's a new thing.
Cool.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Great.
Sounds awesome. So speaking of new things, you were telling us right before we went online.
Yes, I've got a new 6V6 amp. This first one, it's just a 20 watts, two 6V6s, 5 AR4 tube rectifier, and all 12 AX7s, and it's called Laurel Canyon. And it was sort of my conceptual idea was capturing that old scene of the early Laurel Canyon days when, all those early greats were down there, your Jackson Browns, the Eagles, Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And,
hang on 1 second, guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they would hang and just jam, and it became a whole like scene. So when I was developing this, I wanted something to sort of kind of fit in, that genre. Mm-hmm. But it is probably one of my best amps that I think I've ever built. The amount of dynamics and the sparkle to it, the harmonic overtones are just incredible. Which, yes, I set out to do that, but it basically, I swung the bat and hit a grand slam home run with my eyes closed. I mean, it's
That's awesome.
truly fantastic amp. So,
And you said it's 20
so
watts?
we're doing it's 20 watts. We're doing our smaller combos and a slightly smaller cab as well. So we'll be doing all the 15-watt amps. All of the Laurel Canyons will have the slightly more narrow combo cab.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that I was doing before with the Lightning, I could interchange the front baffles between a 210 or 112. So if somebody wanted to switch those two things, we could just do it and it'd be super easy, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we get maybe 210 requests like every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I wanted just something a little more portable, something you could, practically put in the front seat of your car, and still be a very loud, roadworthy, amp.
Mm-hmm.
And it nailed a lot of different things. One of the coolest things is it really nails a lot of the early Rolling Stone sounds. It's got some David Gilmour-y, Pink Floyd kind of vibe going on with it as well. And I couldn't be happier with it. I've actually, if you can see.
Oh, yeah.
There it is. The new little
cute.
Canyon. Yeah, small.
Very cool.
Still matchless heavy. But a lot of that has to do with Celestion, so I blame them and their speakers. I'm using a Heritage G12H30.
Yeah, that's heavy. Big magnet.
Yeah, it's a big magnet. So, and so it's almost 50 pounds. It's just shy of 50. But
Yeah, it's for 20 watts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to offer it in a head too?
Yes, definitely a head, and I'm also going to offer it in a bigger version with 4 6V6s, and we'll also be getting into 6L6 as well, and then maybe some like 80 watt. Might bring back the Super Chief, might bring back the C85, but those are extremely time-consuming amps, and sometimes by the time you're done with building something with all the wiring that goes into it, you're 3 or 4 days into building an amp, and you've basically just kind of gone sideways. So we'll see how it goes.
Right. That's cool. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
That sounds exciting. I'd like to hear some sound clips when you get ready.
Yes. Yeah. I'll probably do the sound clips here in my studio. I'm using some really good Royer 121s, 122V, and I'll throw maybe a Shure 57 on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll have some sound clips real soon.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So how'd you get into the amp building?
Well, I started out as a guitar player, and that was
amen to
really, yeah. Are you drinking, Dave?
I had coffee.
Oh yeah.
Water.
Close enough.
What are you drinking?
Malibu rum.
Malibu rum. Oh, good. You see, you're prepared.
Yeah.
Friends don't like friends drink Malibu rum.
Well, Dave, it came with a dress, and blackberries. So.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so
sure.
someone made you the drink with Malibu rum.
No. I made it, but.
Well,
no,
so what you're saying is you were wearing a dress while you made
I was wearing a dress when I made it.
Perfect.
Yes, it should come with an umbrella. as well. I swear to God, Dave, as much as you and I drank, Dave and I, we were roommates a little bit back in what, 91, 90?
Yeah,
90,
back then, yeah, sure.
back then. Everyone should have invested in like alcohol and beer back when me and Dave we drank a lot. I like all of a sudden, like I saw these old pictures of us and like all these memories came flooding back, you know.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, exactly. It was really good drinks. No, but for like you know, and
I was 20 years old or something.
Yeah, exactly.
90 or something.
Yeah, we were like.
What did 20-year-old kids do?
Drink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Drink.
Well, now they also smoke. They smoke a lot too. But yeah, that's cool. So
I can't even remember the last time I smoked.
Oh, that's
Willie Nelson offered me a joint, and I said, you know, dude, I cannot remember the last time I smoked. And he goes, well, that must have been some really good weed then.
I like that's a good line. That's a good line.
It's funny. It's legal here in L.A. or California, and I just couldn't care less.
Yeah, you can smell it everywhere in L.A.
So ironic.
Don't look at me. I never smoked, so.
Yeah, you never did. I remember that.
No.
But yeah, no, I got my start as a guitarist, and then went to MI. I moved from a small town in Texas in 1988 and moved straight to Hollywood. Went to MI, and then Andy Brower had given some seminars there at the school. And
which I believe I was there.
Dave was there, and so I just showed up there one day and said, you know, hey, are you looking for anybody? And he was kind of like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, kid. And then all of a sudden one morning he called me and said one of my guys was a no-show, and we need to load in Steve Lukather. You know, can you do it? So I was like, yeah, sure. And ironically, I had just met Steve Lukather at a club probably 5 hours prior to this phone call.
Wow.
And then when I show up at Conway with his gear, he looked at me and he goes, dude, like, what the hell? And so that kind of snowballed, and I really just wanted to learn more about tone to better myself as a guitarist. And, you know, I mean, I was decent, but at that time when I was working at Brower, I mean, I was teching or, you know, doing that for Lukather, Tim Pierce, Dean Parks, Peter Frampton. And I'm watching some of these sessions, and it was like watching the best of the best of the best, you know, in that field. And it was just like, that was a big eye opener of the reality of breaking into that scene. I mean,
as a guitar player,
I got to see, I got to see on a firsthand the top echelon level.
Yeah.
You know, and guys like Dean Parks and Tim Pierce were, you know, we were loading them into like 3 sessions a day. You know, we'd load up their gear at 6 a.m. and we'd be done literally at 11 p.m. at night.
Dave, you too? You were involved in that?
Well, just delivering their, you know, being a waiter and delivering their stuff. Dave, you know, taught me the ropes back then, and I think by then you were kind of more done with the Brower scene and more doing involved with making music and
that would have been early 90s.
Yeah.
I'd already been doing Carter since 88 or late
87. Right.
Did that for 2 or 3 years or something, and then.
So Dave, if you sort of maybe not remember, I don't even know if it's true. I just believed it's true that Andy told me that I replaced Matt Bruck, who then went to go work for Ed, of course.
Yeah. That's
so,
probably...
yeah.
Funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's going way back. And unfortunately, I made the mistake of showing Matt my Eddie Van Halen guitar that I built. And
Why, he was like, "Hey, get the official one."
He didn't like it.
Really?
But it was funny too. You know, it's like I'd been to his old apartment, you know, because his roommate was at Brower, and I had replaced him at Brower when he went to work for Ed. And I'm at Henson with Van Halen recording their last album, and I was like, hey, you know, and I'm telling him all that, and I'd met him at Dave Friedman's house a couple of times, and remember he came over to borrow a Variac during a Super Bowl Sunday. You know, that must have been like 91.
You have
I have crazy
memory.
Near photographic memory. So I'm telling him all this, and I'm like, yeah, here, you know, check out the guitar, and yeah, that wasn't good. He didn't. I'm like, dude, I'm not freaking selling these things. I'm running Matchless. I'm like, Eddie Van Halen inspired me to be where I'm at, you know, in my whole life. And, you know, I got to go up to his house probably a dozen times. I actually played on the Steinberger 5150 guitar.
Oh, wow, man.
There in his studio, yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and I actually got to be really good friends with Andy Johns. So he was up there a lot recording different people, and for whatever reason, Andy and I just hit it off. And, you know, it was like I was all of 19, 20 years old, standing on Eddie Van Halen's driveway. And at like midnight, Andy Johns is telling me stories about Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and, you know, all these. I mean, it was just like I could have died in a car crash right after that, and life would have been okay.
Yeah,
like it was great, and he was always so nice to me. You know, every studio I ever saw him in, he was very cool cat.
So how'd you first meet, you know, Ed? I'm curious.
Literally how I met him was I went up to the old address to do a delivery, and he drove out in a hot rod to come around and get me. It was that red Ford hot rod, like a 38 or something. And when that car drove near you, the earth shook. It was just nothing but raw power. And he's like, hey man, you're at the wrong address. And so we pull in and we're chatting a little bit on the driveway, and yeah, he was very cool. And at that time, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge had just came out. And that was a concert me and you went to, Dave, at Irvine. Yeah, and do you remember that?
Yep.
The unfortunate thing about that concert was it was like this JBL sound system, and everything just sounded synthetic. It was not 1984 Van Halen. It just
it didn't sound good.
I
distinctly remember that. It just
like
sounded like
80 eventide harmonizers all going at once. It just didn't sound right. But I've seen him since, and yeah, I mean he's the man. I mean he is guys like him and David Gilmour were literally like the guys, and even Robbie Blunt, you know, who played with Robert Plant.
Oh, he's great.
Those were the guys who, like, that's what I wanted. You know, I'd listen to, you know, Wish You Were Here, and that was what I wanted to be, and I knew it early on. And surprisingly enough, the Cars album, Candio, that was a really big inspirational thing for me. Because it was so different of that time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was like futuristic. It's like now you listen to it and, you know, I mean, it's dated, but that's only because it's 2019. It's not 1978 anymore. But that album had a really big impact on me, and like that's where I wanted to go, you know, in life. And shit, you know, small kid from a Texas town, you know, I'm sort of here.
Yeah, you know? You're in LA. You met a bunch of people.
Got to meet some great people and work with some great people, and you know, it's the weirdest thing, you know. I one day was sitting at home watching The Simpsons, and my telephone rings, and it was Lou Reed calling me, you know, at my house, and I'm just like, this is just weird, you know. Eagles were a huge part of me studying like as a songwriter, because I do write, studying Don Henley, but you know, but just the Eagles in general was a very big influence. And one day my kid, he was on a little league baseball team, and the coach calls, and I'd been helping coach the team, you know, all throughout the season. And the coach calls and he says, "Hey, I've got a family emergency. I need you to coach the game today." So I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." You know, and I go to his house, get all the stuff. I get to the field, and Glenn Fry is standing right there. And I'm like, "Hey," and he's all, "How you doing?" And he's like, "Yeah, my kid's on your team." And I go, "Well, I've got to coach this game. Do you want to help me? I mean, please." And he's like, "Hell yeah." So it's like, I mean, how many places in the world can you coach a little league baseball game with freaking Glenn Fry? Yeah. You know, the guy was like my hero. I mean, you know, from a tiny little kid growing up, and
did you you had to hand him a card, right? You're like, "Hey."
Oh, well, you know, I didn't get pushy, but at the time I was driving a Buick, and he was very impressed that I was driving a Detroit car, and he mentioned that.
Oh.
So he was happy about that. That's probably Detroit made in China, but you know, we won't go there.
Hey, actually, there's a cool question here from Earthshine 402 says, "Where did the name Matchless come from?"
It was originally from the British Motorcycle Company, and so they wanted the idea to be something without equal. So
okay,
that's where it came from.
That makes total sense now. Before I had no clue. So, yeah.
No, we actually had the motorcycle posters like all over the factory in mid-90s. We've gone through a lot of changes, you know, throughout the years. That first shop that I worked in, where Dave was like, "Hey, you know, give him a call." When I walked into that place, it was such a shithole. I literally almost started crying. It was so bad. It was so bad. It was like this, like, it was almost like a car garage. And in North Hollywood, I mean, Dave knows, the summers are like 115. In the winters, you know, it would get to be like, you know, 40. You could blow smoke, you know, just sitting at your desk because it was so cold in there. And then so we did that for a few years, and then they sold the company to U.S. Music. and then we moved on to Anaheim. So my commute went from literally 3 minutes to like 2 hours.
Oh.
And then I wound up moving down to the South Bay and just commuting to Anaheim for a few years, and then after that we got moved into Santa Fe Springs, and that was a fantastic building. I love that place, and it was basically Rick Parada was managing a bunch of the companies and Matchless. And I was running all the production lines and trained all the workers and then did all the QC stuff. And then, by like mid '96, Mark had got the company back, bought it from US Music. Rick left, unfortunately. And then we were bankrupt by '98. And we all like lost everything. So reopened in 2000, and the investors who they knew how Matchless was ran, and they knew what was going on, basically from soup to nuts. Really super smart people, and once they figured that out, I got a phone call right in the middle of when I started doing Jamison amps, and I had built probably 15 by then, and I got the call, hey, we want to reopen and we want you to come in and run all the production, all the operations, and then literally the next day, I got probably 30 orders for Jamison amps. It was just weird coincidence. But I went ahead and took the Matchless job, and that was 19 years ago.
Wow,
Yeah,
so in 2000.
And you're still in business.
Woo! Knock on wood.
Knock on
Yeah, but
wood.
there's a little part you skipped. You so you
what?
went from the Brower's cartage, and then what?
You're gonna open that can of worms. I after Brower, I went and worked at VHT.
And then something after that.
No, VHT was straight to Matchless.
Top Hat.
Top Hat was way later. Top Hat was after Matchless went out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, Top Hat. I was there to kind of consult. After looking at how stuff was done, I helped them out, and that lasted maybe 5 or 6 months. I think that the greatest thing that ever happened with Top Hat was, one, it showed me that I can do it too, because I knew. And the other great thing was I got to meet Elliott Smith, and I sat in a small tiny room and talked with Elliott Smith for probably 45 minutes, and that was like a life-changing, awesome moment, of meeting just a phenomenal artist. The guy was a musician. He wasn't a guitar player. He wasn't a singer. He was a musician, and he understood music technically, inside and out. And he was just completely brilliant. And it was a horrible, horrible loss with what happened to him. And then actually, Dave, before Top Hat, I worked at Bogner for a little bit. You remember?
Oh, yeah.
At the Making Music place, and then I helped them move into where they're at now in North Hollywood.
Oh wow, we could have a whole hour discussion just about Bogner.
Yeah, the Bogner thing was really interesting. It wasn't a good fit. for me, especially at that time. And but they were very interesting, smart people. I enjoyed it. It just wasn't. It wasn't where I was at.
Well, it's a whole different vibe.
Yeah, it's a whole different vibe in every way imaginable.
So, but
how long were you working at BHT?
Probably 8 months to a year, I think. It seems longer than that. It seems like that lasted 10 years.
Yeah, because that was the first really amp work.
Yeah, that was the first real amp
you were
work.
kind of cutting your teeth on stuff.
Yeah, completely. Learning how to strip wire and yeah. And solder. Yeah.
So that was working with Stephen Fryatt.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And we were right next door to Mike Landau's rehearsal spot. So we would get to see some of the most amazing stuff. And then next door to that was Bob Bradshaw.
Yep.
Wow.
And I remember one day hearing like this Pink Floyd-y riff from The Wall over and over again. And I thought, damn, that sounds just like it. And so I just walked in and looked, and it said Pink Floyd everywhere on all the road cases. And I was like, oh, that's why it sounds so much like it.
Did you meet David Gilmour?
I haven't. I was lucky enough I went to the Castellarization show, which at that time was Gibson Amphitheater. And I was good friends with the guy who ran that venue, and then he ran Niederlander at the Greek for a long time. And he invited me, and the seats were just phenomenal. It was like first row above the floor. One of the most amazing concerts I ever saw. And then he brought us backstage, and we were hanging out in Pink Floyd's green room. And I think I kind of made the mistake of talking to Rick Wright, who was just not having it. And it just, it was kind of a very cold response. And at first I got a little angry, but then I thought, this guy was a huge freaking rock star before I was even born. He's met 1 billion people. He just played a show. You're in his green room. You're being a dick. Don't take it personal, just let him. And then, so they came up to me and they said, hey, do you want to meet David? And I was like, no, I can't. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do that. And I'm getting a text from Maroon 5 right now.
Oh.
I'm dropping James Valentine's name, but I'm sorry. He's texting me. I got to turn that off. Dave, have you noticed, like, you sort of look a little bit like David Gilmour?
Yeah.
You're looking more and more like David Gilmour. It's kind of weird, man.
People have said that.
Yeah.
You could be like his. He did tour Detroit.
If I can say, I actually think David Gilmour's starting to look more like Dave Friedman.
That could be.
Yeah, he's starting. Yeah. He's actually morphing more into Dave than because he's really changed a lot in the way that he's looked. I think Dave, you stayed pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But especially with
except my hair used to be less.
No, this Dave's changed way more. Dave, did you see that old picture I found? It's on like Instagram floating around. Mark, I think you saw it, didn't you?
I didn't know.
It's a picture of you and me and Keith Howland.
Yeah.
And I forgot, like, I had a freaking beard. I mean, what the hell? I'm like 19 years old and I have a beard. And yeah, Dave had like the long, super long, dark brown hair, and we all looked young and fit.
Yeah.
Babies.
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Yeah. Totally. Speaking of David Gilmour, we got a good question from L. Scott Music, and he said maybe we can talk about the recent auction of Gilmour's guitars.
Yes, I saw it.
Oh, you did?
I went to the LA auction with my buddy Edward Fletcher, great guitarist and actor. We had so much fun that day. And we ran into Bob Hartree and Eric Hartree. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know
all people.
Who are they? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
old friends of ours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Bob Hartree is a freaking amazing guitar player. I love listening to him play. But yeah, we went to the Christie's auction in Beverly Hills.
Wow.
And I mean, those guitars were 3-4 feet away.
So which ones? Because were they spread out or were they all there in LA?
Yeah, they were all on the walls.
No, I mean, were they spread out in different parts of the country or were they all in LA?
They only brought probably 10 guitars from the UK to LA and then New York. And so yeah, Blackie was right there. I would not have guessed it would have sold for $4 million, but awesome.
What would you guess? What would you have thought?
I would have thought $1 million. You know, the one that really had me intrigued was the 12 string. I think it was a Martin D35 12 string, maybe 1971, and that sold for a lot of money. He wrote the song "Wish You Were Here" on that guitar, and recorded the song with it.
Substantial.
I was kind of thinking that would go for $2 million, and I think it got real close, like 1.8 or something like that. Don't quote me. And then his old gold top that, I mean, all these years up until 6 months ago, I thought the guitar solo on Another Brick in the Wall was a Strat. It was a freaking gold top Les Paul. P90s.
I was going to say P90s because it definitely had that single coil tone.
Yeah. And I read something kind of interesting. The way they recorded that was the producer wanted it direct through the board. And so he played it that way, and David was not happy with it. So then they reamped it to 100 watt high watt and the 412, and they reamped it through that, and then they just blended the two tracks, and that's how he got Another Brick in the Wall.
Super cool.
But I've seen Pink Floyd 4 times. I've seen David Gilmour 3 times. I've seen Brit Pink Floyd, Australian Pink Floyd. And for anybody listening, I highly recommend either of those bands or both of those bands.
I saw Brit Floyd too. Yeah, I saw them. They were great.
It's absolutely incredible. It just incredible. And I probably spent more money in my entire life at the Hollywood Bowl for David Gilmour, and I got box seats just below the mixing console. And ironically, a good friend of mine was running monitor mix there for the tour, and he called me, and him and the FOH guy were awesome enough to like come out to Matchless and spend a day there. And it was funny because he was like, "You can't ask me for tickets." And I'm like, "Dude, I bought my tickets like freaking 6 months ago." And I took out a second mortgage and sold my car to pay for them. But
when I was in college, I went to, this is like around 87. I went to see Floyd in Tampa.
Momentary lapse of reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mike Landau played on that one.
On the album?
Yeah, Mike Landau played the really cool, slick guitar part, the kind of palm muty with delay on one slip. And that was just like the coolest stuff. I don't know who, somebody else played the greased part. But apparently David was so involved with the production that he didn't play as much on the album as he probably could have. But he had all of the parts all worked out. So, nobody went in there like, coming up with their own stuff. It was all worked out.
But that was a lot of that album was written with Bob Ezrin too, right?
I don't know.
Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Probably.
I think it was, but maybe I'm wrong.
Good possibility.
Yeah. That album, as a Pink Floyd purist, at least for me, I don't know how you felt. I mean, because I love Animals and like going back to just some of the early, even before like with Syd Barrett. I mean, I love
Syd Barrett.
Yeah,
is,
it's just really cool stuff. I loved it. It felt forced to me. Momentary Lapse of Reason. It almost felt like we have to write Pink Floyd style music.
Yeah.
But
what's amazing is he's a fantastic rockabilly player. I don't know if you've ever seen him play rockabilly.
No.
But yeah, it's like he played it his whole entire life. Just rockabilly.
Wow. Yeah, he's super talented.
Yeah, I got to see the Division Bell.
That was a better tour.
Like 94. And there was one part of the concert where, all of the sound and every musician on stage, it just completely homogenized and it just like turned into this like it was like a beast. And that was like goosebumps and hair standing up, just going like, wow, these guys are just so locked. That was a fantastic show.
That's cool. The good thing about the auction that I liked, because I know a lot of people are up in arms, like, oh my God, $4 million for a Strat. Even I was initially, but then I thought about it. I'm like, well, you know what?
I don't like that.
It was to me. It was for charity. So
exactly. If he could get 10 million for the guitar,
right.
and I'm okay with it.
Right.
I mean, I think it was a super amazing and gracious thing that he did.
Amazing, yeah.
To be able to part with. I mean, he parted with serial number 1. The white and gold Strat. Whether it's technically really, really serial number 1, nobody will ever know. But that's what it's kind of designated as.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, a 55. But the fact that he was able, like he was at a point in his life where he could part with those things. I mean, some of my guitars, like my Grosh guitars, I will probably be buried with them, like, yeah, there's, you have like a connection with some and you just gravitate towards some in the way they feel. Some guitars, they don't speak to me as much. And if it's effort to play, if it's like clunky and thick and hard to play, then I can't play them, and some people like that. They, like the big, thick, round necks. I tend to like kind of more the V-neck. I did get to feel the Dave, have you felt the Frankenstrat neck?
Oh yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely freaking incredible. I mean, I would not want all of my guitars to feel like that, but for what that does, like, that was one of the freaking coolest necks I've ever felt.
Well, describe it for me. What was it?
Well, it's kind of thin, but not thin. And it's like almost imagine, I don't know what you would call it. It's sort of flat in the back. But it just felt great, like well broken in.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't hard to play.
Right.
But yeah, and I tried to, play a Van Halen guitar through a Van Halen amp, and all it sounded like was Eddie Van Halen playing me. It just
I thought you were going to say, let me guess, it didn't sound like Van Halen.
it wasn't right. What's funny is I gave a seminar at MI about amps and amp building and stuff, like maybe 10 years ago, and at the end, some kid in the audience, he said, "Can you make an amp sound like Van Halen?" And I go, "Yeah, absolutely. I can make any amp sound like Eddie Van Halen. The trick is you got to get Eddie Van Halen to play through the amp at that exact time." And one guy in the entire crowd just burst out laughing, and he must have been like 55. I mean, he understood perfectly well what I meant, and everyone else just had like this deer in the headlight, look. But it's so true. I mean, Dave, like Ed will play a Gretsch Duo Jet and a Tweed Deluxe, and it's Eddie freaking Van Halen. It's he doesn't need a 100-watt Marshall head and a hot-rodded guitar. It's it's him. It's his hands.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
You gotta have that sound in the hands.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it time and time again where you've had an amp, it sounds great, everything's great. Guy comes in and tries it, and as he's trying it, you're looking at the amp going, something happened to that?
Yeah, please stop.
Did
Yeah.
it break?
I've had that. I've had that, and I've also had the opposite, where I've played an amp day in, day out for years, and then somebody like freaking Mark Goldenberg or Tim Pierce or John Jorgensen will come in and play the amp, and you're just like, oh my God, that's what it's supposed to sound like? That's incredible. That sounded 100 billion times better than any time I've ever heard it before.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, shit, these guys are so good.
They're so good.
They really are.
And it's beyond just
touch.
Yeah, it's touch.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's not just the notes. It's not just the amp or their technique. It's the guitar. It's everything and their hands. I mean, these guys are just so good.
It's just something. It's just that magic, untouchable something. Mike Landau's got it. Jeff Beck has it. Just that Eddie Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
Just that special thing that and people are probably going to be pissed that I say this, but I've had enough rum that I can. I watched Landau playing Jimi Hendrix, and it was like better than Hendrix. It was so cool, It was like growly and he just had this attack, this feel, and you're just like, God, you sleep with that thing under your pillow. Like, How does that happen? How does somebody play Hendrix better than Hendrix? How is that possible? And
just so good.
Yeah, I mean, I was just completely blown away by that.
Hey, we got a question for you from Brent Harmon. Question: how did Phil come up with the Matchless Chieftain and DC-30?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would have been Mark Sampson originally.
That was totally Mark Sampson. Mark Sampson and Rick Parada were the ones who invented that. I just stepped in and made sure the amps were built the same way, and then once we got over that hurdle of reproving ourselves, then I went on to make some changes in layout and parts. One of the big things I've noticed, Dave, maybe you've noticed too, is the old Allen Bradley resistors. They're so old now at this point that most of them have tons of white noise.
Yeah, you can't really. It's hard to use those anymore.
Yeah, and the value is just all over the place. You take a 100K resistor, take 5 of them, and you measure them, and you're going to get 89K in one, 120K in another, and they all have white noise. Yeah, I mean it's a fine balance, and it was hard for me to spend 23 years building amps with carbon comps, only to be forced to come to the conclusion that they just aren't what they used to be. Those resistors may have been cool 20 years ago because at that time they were 40 years old. Well, they're now 60 years old,
Right.
Yeah.
and they're dried out. They're not. Yeah. So
you have to have a whole new set, right? You got to redo it.
yeah. But the amps that I did design were the Independence, the Phoenix, the Avalon, the Nighthawk, and I developed the Clubman with reverb, the DC-30 with reverb. That was the hardest one, and that was like one of those moments where I was literally driving my car on PCH, and I figured it out while I was driving.
I know how I'll do it.
Yeah, I know, and it was like, yeah. But and I spent a long time prior to that, trying to do it, and then like things would always affect another thing, and I could not put out an amp where something affected something else. And I've seen amps where they have like 4 channels and whatever, and you dial in a great sound and clean, but then when you go to the gain, it's totally horrible, and then you got to redial the amp, and then when you go back to the clean, and then that sounds horrible, and you got to go back and redial that, and I didn't want any of that, and I wanted to stick as old school as possible, staying with all point to point and everything, and yeah.
So a question for you.
I'm sure I've designed more. I can't think of, but
are you like on a day-to-day basis involved in the wiring, or you have a staff who are doing that? How does that work?
I do have a staff, and yeah, we had just a terrible experience a few years back. A woman who had wired for me for 15 years. She passed away at the factory.
Wait, at the factory?
At the factory.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, like dropped over dead at the factory?
Yeah.
Wow.
A heart attack. Yeah. And
man.
we loved her, I mean, she was family. I mean,
That's tough.
she was there day in, day out for 16, 17 years.
Wow.
And she hand wired, just wiring only, but she hand wired tons of amps that have been in the hands of very famous, iconic people and famous albums. And she was a very big part of the production. She passed away, and then the only other guy who'd been with us even longer than that, he actually just had to quit, and he had to move back to Arizona to help take care of his mom. And he was with me for 18 years. And so we brought back another guy who worked with us for probably 14 years, and he's been absolutely fantastic. He's built a lot of really great amps as well for good people. Yeah. So, and we've gone through a lot. We've been trying to feel it out and find the right people who can do the job in a timely manner, and that's a very difficult thing.
I was going to say it's a skill to be able to do this. Yeah.
So yeah, all the prototype stuff I build, and it's kind of expensive for me to be like wiring the amps day in, day out. So but when I have to, I do. I mean, dude, I freaking mop the floors.
Right.
You
You
know,
got to do what you got to do.
literally.
Yeah, exactly.
I turn the lights on in the morning and I turn the lights out at night.
Mhm.
So there's not one single job in there that I haven't had to do. I mean, I've had to be the toilet repairman. You know, I've had to put the lighting in. You know, I've had to build the benches. I've done it. Um, so, but
That's
yeah,
that,
I'll do some and some component work and um, you know, I try not to,
yeah.
but
Hey, we got a question for Dave
Uh-oh.
from Rick Hyatt. Can I swap out tubes on a stock Marshall to 6v6s?
You actually can if you use JJ 6v6s. You have to rebias it.
yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna say about the bias.
yeah. You have to rebias it, but you can do it.
Okay.
The JJ ones will handle that kind of plate voltage. So yeah.
And Lionel Hernandez, or Lionel, I'm sorry, I always butcher your name, but thanks for watching, man. Matchless needs to reissue the rack preamp.
Oh dear God, you want to come and build them?
Well,
You know,
do it. Do
they,
a synergy. Do a synergy module.
there were a lot of things back in the late '90s that were meant to be not expensive, but wound up being extremely expensive. And that's the trick. And I always say like that's the difference between a good idea and a great idea. Good ideas are really freaking expensive. And in the late '90s, there were a lot of good ideas. Um, and when that happens, you lose money, and you know, shit starts going sideways.
Mm-hmm.
But those rack mounts are pretty darn involved. There's a lot going on in there, and we were using opticouplers for the channel switching, and somehow a box of 1,000 of those opticouplers just wound up missing, along with a lot of other stuff at the yeah.
Oh, Al?
I'm not saying any names, but that the old
I haven't thought about him in 10 million years until right now.
there I mean entire DC 30s that I built would wind up missing by the next morning,
Oh my God.
you know, and it was like a perfect storm of different people. You know, you definitely can't point the finger at one person with that place. But those were like really dark, kind of bad times, bad vibe, and late '90s was not a great scene.
Yeah. Interesting. It would, just out of curiosity though, it would be cool to have a matchless style preamp, like Synergy. I don't know. Have you seen the Synergy modules?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, be cool.
Oh no, I thought about it, but I mean, how am I gonna compete with some of the stuff that's like already out there? You know, that's good stuff. Bruce Egnater makes great stuff. You know, so I don't know. That's a territory I totally want to get into.
Gotcha.
And right now my plate is so full with everything I'm doing, and you know, releasing Laurel Canyon, and then all the other spinoffs of that. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of like time, and then also like I have to do all of the repair work and all of the tech support, and you know, all the teaching there as well. So you know, my time is limited. I mean, I worked last month. I worked 19 days in a row. Okay. And at the end of that, I nearly collapsed and I didn't see a dent, you know. All I saw what happened is my kids and my wife like missed me,
Right.
you know. I didn't, you know, it was like it was still as it is, you know. I mean, yeah, I got a lot of stuff accomplished, but you know,
Right.
and then setting up the new factory, you know, we were in one building on Pontiac Street for 18 years, and we just moved a block and a half up the street, and that was a lot of stuff we had to get over and pack up and then get back up and running. So but we're all settled in now, and I love our new location. I could not be happier with it. It's perfectly set out. Dave, please come by.
Yeah, if I ever make it over to the west side, I work 6 days a week here.
we're like a mile away from the village.
Still
Yeah.
hard to get over that way.
I actually I got to meet Eric Clapton at the village, and it was what was funny was on the ticket I was delivering Lawrence Juber's nylon classical guitar, and on the ticket it said Rush, and I was like, oh my God, I am going to get to meet Alex Lifeson. This is like the greatest moment of my life.
Right.
And so I pick up the guitar from Lawrence, and Lawrence is like, you have to take care of this guitar. Like, you know, it's very special. And so I look at it, and it just looked like a beat up old nylon guitar. It didn't look like anything special. And it turned out to be like, you know, it came with insurance papers. And I mean, it was from like I think 1700s from Spain. And I mean, it was like this phenomenal guitar. And so I bring it to the village, and I go to the guy at the counter, and I go, are they here? And he goes, who? And I go, Rush. And he goes, oh, no, I'm sorry, it's not Rush. I'm like, what do you mean it's not Rush? It says Rush on the ticket. And he goes, no, dude, I thought the same thing. It's not Rush. Oh, no, but it's better. It's better. It's Eric Clapton. I go, Eric Clapton? Then why does it say Rush? And he goes, because he's doing this movie. He's doing
Rush
a song
tour.
for a movie called Rush.
Right.
And the song he's playing is called Tears in Heaven. And I delivered the acoustic nylon guitar to Eric Clapton for him to record Tears in Heaven with.
Oh, that's killer.
It's like, doo-doo.
Yeah, that's iconic.
At the village.
And then he did the MTV Unplugged.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see. I think there was a question. Oh, let's talk about the matchless version of a twin, ES295 said. I don't know.
You mean the Fender twin?
I guess so. I guess that's what he means.
Okay. I can certainly make one of those. If you're in the market of something like that, then send me an email. Phil@matchressamplifiers.com, PHIL.
There you go.
I am developing 6L6 models as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
What
Let's
else
see.
we got here?
Someone asked, "Who's Elliott Smith?" I wasn't sure either.
Oh God. Oh, Elliott Smith, singer, songwriter, guitarist, musician. Definitely look him up. He had several albums. XO. If you want like a really great definitive album, Elliott Smith XO. Figure 8 is another fantastic album. And then Rob Schnoff and I think Tom Rothrock maybe or Bob, they did a posthumous album called Basement on a Hill. and they were able to piece together a lot of his work and what he was doing, and they made a full record.
And what
And
happened
it's
to him?
absolutely incredible. What's that?
What happened to him?
It's kind of a convoluted story. No one's actually really super certain as to the exact details, but the theory, the police report, was he was supposed to go to drug rehab in Palm Springs. And my old friend Fred Wallachy from Westwood Music was actually going to bring Elliott to Palm Springs to get cleaned up. He had a bad heroin problem, and then he got into a fight with his girlfriend the day he was supposed to leave, and a knife wound up in his chest.
Right.
So however that happened.
However that happened, that happened.
Wow. Too bad.
And Fred had told me he was pissed because he had all of Elliott's stuff in his car, and he didn't show up. He just wasn't there that day, and he kept calling, and then he found out later that that's what happened. But he was a just brilliant songwriter and singer, and one of my favorite things is he would do tons of layers of harmonies on his vocals, and it's just stunning stuff. A little bit on the melancholy side, but I really super recommend Elliott Smith. Everybody.
Cool. We have a question from Rippin' Lips. Rippin' Lips.
All right.
Dave, what
Mick
kind of...
Jagger?
Possibly. Dave, what kind of preamp tubes did Ed use in his 68? I don't know if you would know that.
Originally, probably whatever was laying around.
Mm-hmm.
Later, it was Chinese preamp tubes that we put in them.
Okay.
Probably from sometime in the 80s on.
Right. Bruce Egnator is in the chat watching the show.
Hi, Bruce.
What's up, Bruce? How are you?
I love Bruce Egnator. He
Just saw Bruce.
is
Did
the
you?
nicest guy.
We visited him in Detroit on Monday.
Oh, good. Good to hear. Yeah, he was missing Sweetwater.
His little shop.
Nice. Yeah, we missed him at Sweetwater. Would have been cool to see him.
The weather was great, Bruce. You see, you did miss out on that one.
Yeah, the weather was fantastic. I'm glad that I brought that with me, Dave. It was all because of me. Just saying.
It's all you. Yes,
it's all me.
Course.
Of course.
We're happy you came then. Thank you, and please come again next year because we want to bring that weather again.
Yes, all right, no problem.
But if you don't bring it next year, you're in deep shit.
I also helped break. Well, I helped break down stuff, so that was also good. I thought that you would have said.
You guys got to see Eric Johnson there, right?
That was super cool.
Second time. Yeah, he was there last year too.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's so good.
Growing up in a suburb of Houston, Texas, like Eric Johnson, even back then he was like a god. Like the guy was just such a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Back then. I don't even want to know how young he was, you know. But
he's talk about tone and fingers. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And then, watching him like switch on the pedal board while he's playing all that completely complicated, I would like fall over. I'd lose my balance. Like
he's a tap dancer. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Bruce.
I don't know how he does it.
Bruce said before, I was just going to mention, he said, we have Glen Fry Avenue in Royal Oak, Michigan, where he came from.
Hey, nice.
So that's cool.
Well deserved.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Glen Fry.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
His harmonies were amazing, Even like when you just hearing him and Timothy B. Schmidt singing harmonies on other people's stuff, it's just angelic, Yeah, I love it.
Good stuff. Someone said, what's the deal with VHT, Tyson Rinker? Well, VHT was. Tell me if I'm wrong, but VHT was sold, and now they're on. It's no. Was a V? It's an overseas brand now, right?
No, VHT wasn't sold. Well, it's the name was sold. Okay, sort of, yes. That's something.
It's complicated.
Steve explained it on our.
He did. He explained it on our show. Yeah.
So, if someone wants to know, go back and watch that show.
Yeah, watch the Stephen Fryette show, and he definitely explained it. So, yeah, and so ES295 says, "What's new on the horizon for Matchless?" Well, you definitely talked about the new 6v6 model.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Laurel Canyon.
Laurel Canyon. Yeah, that's a great name.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, the bigger 6v6s, and then the 6L6s I'm working on right now. So, but I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, and I don't always like. It takes me a while to release stuff because I want to be like really happy with it and know that it's perfect.
Does that ever really happen? Come on.
Well, no.
Is it ever really perfect, and are you ever really happy?
No, well, I don't. With Laurel Canyon, I was actually kind of I was kind of surprised by that one. But yeah, sometimes you tweak a lot. I mean, I gotta say, again, James Valentine with Maroon 5, he played a really big role in the development of the Independents, because he's a fantastic guitarist. Anything you ever hear with Maroon 5 is 1/16 the guy's true talent. Phenomenal jazz player, chord melody for days. The guy, he can play like Bill Frisell. And he's got a very complicated rack. And he uses 2 Independence heads and I think a pair of John Suhr 100 watts as well. And he uses them all for like different things, but James really was thoughtful about the amp and minor tiny little tweaks here and there that I think without him that amp kind of wouldn't be as great as it is. And that amp, the Independence, ironically, I was totally going for if David Gilmour wanted one amp and it was going to cover everything, it would be that amp. That was what I was shooting for when I built that. I've never got him to try one out, as far as I know. Jeff Beck played one, and he used it at a session at Nightbird, and then I was fortunate enough to get to meet him backstage at the Greek, and he could not have been nicer. I mean, I was just stuttering the whole time. It was like Jeff Beck, and
he's amazing. God,
he was just such a sweet guy. Invited me to go back to the party at the hotel, and at that time it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I've got to take the kids to school. I can't. Oh my God, it's freaking Jeff. Oh no, maybe the kids can stay home.
Oh man,
it was like that.
there would be no question. The kids would stay home. Yeah, there'd be no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, it would not have been good. But,
I think for me, I would have been. It's Jeff Beck.
I was in tears, like Jeff Beck invited you to go hang.
You asked for forgiveness,
right?
My wife would be like, "Yeah, that's okay. Kids will stay home."
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's funny.
Shit. Now, like the kids are in soon to be 11th grade and 7th grade, so yeah, it's just like you whatever.
Yeah, you got to
Stay
do
home.
it.
Stay
You got
home.
to you got to do what you got to do.
I'm hanging out with Jeff Beck.
Yeah. Dan Pfeiffer, he said he's coming down towards me. Shoot me an email if you want, if you're around down here. Let's see. I'm looking at questions. This was from Craig. He says, Dave, you told a Facebook friend to run his BE at 115 volts. He said it made it bigger feel and tone improvement than anything else, more open, harmonic, dynamic, swishy. Can you speak on this? Thanks.
Well, he was asking essentially something. I think the person was asking about the brown box, little box thing, and often there's a lot of places that have. We don't in LA, but a lot of places have high wall voltage.
Yeah.
Like really high, like 126 or something.
125, yeah.
And and really the amps are meant to be run at 120 or lower. At least that's what the transformer spec for 120. I find that when they run higher, they just sound kind of brittle and just not very nice. And so, but what I have found is that a little under the 120 mark also sounds great. So I mean, it's not like you're variacing your amp down to 90 volts or something, but you are just giving it a little drop, a few volts, and there's often like a sweet spot right there around 115, 16 or something like that, and it's just a little nicer than the 120, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what.
The first time I saw that was Rusty Anderson came to the factory, and he wanted to play some DC 30s. We did like 4 of them, and he brought his own Variac. And he had his own little sweet spot, and it was super low. I mean, it must have been like 108, but it sounded great,
Yeah, I run my BE. I have my BE set at 115 volts with the Variac, and because my wall voltage I measured is 123 out the wall, so not super high, but I figured, you know what, why not? And it sounds
high enough to make a difference, really.
Yeah, and it's also it varied too. Like during the day, like I could see like it was, jumping around.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's why the little brown box is really cool, because it tells you the wall voltage coming in, and then you can match the input and then reduce it by X percentage. It's quite cool.
Yeah.
What's funny is I'll get tech support if people call and they're telling me like their B+ voltage is way low, and I'm like, well, what's your AC voltage? And they're always, well, it's 120, idiot. This is America. It's like that, and it's like,
and they measure it. Oh, it's 115.
Well, did you take a multimeter and then, oh shit, I'm getting 111 volts. I'm like, yeah,
there you go.
Bump it up to 120 and then tell me what your B+ voltage is.
Yep.
Like whenever you're setting your bias on your amps, I always tell people that you have to have a Variac, and you got to make sure that your wall voltage is at 120 when you're actually setting this bias.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, shit.
you don't have to, but I mean, but
when I biased my BE, it was on I didn't use the Variac at that point.
Well, on some of our amps, we kind of push the filter cap sort of to the limit. So if you're going over on the voltage, you're going to have a quicker lifespan, drop down on those.
Yeah, they're going to die faster. Yeah.
Doctor, me about filter caps.
Why is that?
Oh, this had a bad batch of them.
Oh, that's fun. Were they Samoa?
No, they were something from ARS.
Ah,
oh, really?
And wherever they came from, and they were fine for years and years and years and years and years, and then all of a sudden, not fine anymore.
Oh,
yeah. Well, that happens.
They just fail. They just start failing now.
I can't tell you how many different amp builders throughout the years have called me and said, "Hey, are you having problems with JJ's?" And the answer is literally always, what month is it? You know?
You're having problems with JJs. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Can't use those for EL34s anymore. That's done.
What's funny is like they always act so surprised too.
Yeah. Or, well, I get sets of them. They're perfectly fine. Yeah, but you don't have to get lots of sets of
Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands. Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and let me tell you how many of those I had to replace also.
Yeah, and you've got $2,000 tied up in tubes sitting there for like the next month or so.
And then the JJ preamp tubes are awfully fun because they just up and just decide to stop working one day.
Oh, I know.
It's like we work perfectly fine. Oh no, not now.
Absolutely.
Ugh.
Luckily, we only use them in one spot, so not too bad.
Well, Chinese tubes, preamp tubes, especially in our amps, sound horrible. I hear them in Bogner's, Marshalls, high gain EL34, and they sound fantastic. Matchless, they just sound terrible.
So what are you using?
Right now, I have to use freaking JJ's. So I use JJ's. The Electro Harmonics EF86 is actually a really good EF86. And the Chinese 5AR4 is a pretty decent rectifier tube as far as reliability goes, know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as a manufacturer, you have to count in cost, reliability, and sound. And
we use JJ EL84s and the EL84 amps.
Yeah, I mean,
we have to because there is no other EL34 built that will handle what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we're not hitting it quite as hard as probably what you are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Scott MacArthur says, huge Matchless fan and own quite a few. One of my favorite amplifier companies.
Thank you.
Cool, Scott.
Thank you, Scott MacArthur.
And Sean Tubbs says, I'm a sucker for 6v6 amps.
Sean, call me.
You know where to go there.
You know where to go.
Spencer
I see a video in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Spencer K. Poon, interesting name. Sounds like it could be a Friedman amplifier.
That sounds like a Bart Simpson phone call.
Spencer K. Poon.
I'm looking for Spencer K. Poon.
He says, best gear show on the net. Hey, thank you. And Sean says, I remember picking up two 4x12 open back cabs and my Chieftains from Mark.
Nice.
What happened to Mark? What's he doing?
I don't know. We did an amp show together. We sat next to each other on a panel, some amp forum, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last time I heard from him. He was a super sweet guy, and I worked with him for years.
Cool.
I mean, I was the guy at the factory that Mark would walk out of his room and he'd say, I want to make a new amp. I want it to have an EF86. I want it to have tremolo, and I want it to have reverb. Come get me when you get stuck. And he'd walk back to his room, and I would build it.
Oh, cool.
So I mean, it was very cool working with him. He was a brilliant amp builder or I guess designer. And I miss Rick Parada a lot too. He's with Royer Microphones now. He really took me under his wing back in the very early days, and spent a lot of time with me. Mark was just more like, learn it, and so I did. I had to sort of trial by fire kind of thing.
Gotcha. I see a bunch of people came from Johnny Bean's show. So Johnny, thanks for sending people over our way. Appreciate it. You guys check out Johnny Bean's show if you haven't. So thanks for that. Appreciate it. Rippin' Lips says, I get my tubes straight from Bob at Eurotubes. They have a 6-month warranty. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people can get individual sets of tubes, but it's much different when they have,
Yeah, but how much is he buying if he's buying like 100 at a time?
Yeah.
I mean, we have like minimums where we have to buy, a couple of hundred tubes.
Yeah. I know that we're at the 90-minute mark, and I know, Dave, you had a run, right? It's good.
I do.
Okay.
I do. I have to meet someone somewhere.
No problem.
No.
So
we got to hang again.
we'll do it part 2. We'll do a part 2.
Way too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
You came to our party in the South Bay.
Yeah, how many years ago was that?
I know. That was, for me, that was 4 houses ago.
For me, that seems like a couple years ago. It's probably more like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was. It was over.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, Caleb? He says hey. So, Phil, tell us where people can see your amplifiers and buy your amplifiers, and because I know you want to send everybody to go buy your amps.
Go to my website, matchressamplifiers.com, and you can look up our dealer list. I have a large network all throughout the U.S., UK. People in the UK, if you're listening, we want to expand our stores there. Japan, Australia, New Zealand. We have dealers all over the place. So just look us up online and Facebook and all that good stuff, and or just send us an email. I mean, I'm always answering the phone. It's me and Christine. Christine does all of the business side of Matchless, which is, I would say, is 90% of having a successful company is that side of it. Mm-hmm. The other 10% is just trying to make a great product, and so. You can always reach us, call us, email. Email is easier, but we're available always.
Cool.
Yeah, and people are welcome to come to the factory too.
Oh, sweet. Well, next time I come to LA, I'd love to check it out.
Yeah.
And the Laurel Canyon, you guys check out that amp coming out. That sounds really cool. Our next guest is John Gundry from Throwback, and the Throwback pickups and pedals and stuff like that. So, and that is going to be July 12th, actually at 8 p.m. So, Dave, that's going to be 5 p.m. your time on July 12th.
Okay.
All right.
Remind me, sir.
Yeah. I squared it away already with you, but just to remind you. But I'll send you the note. So, guys, thanks for joining. Phil, so awesome to have you on the show, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Matchless Amplifiers, iconic amplifiers. They're super high-end stuff. Check them out. And
absolutely great amps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, thank you so much for joining us, man. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll be back. We'll see you soon. Take care. And Phil, just hang on one second while I hang up.
Will do.